I was never supposed to be there. My name is Eleanor Vance, and for 37 years I was a housemaid. Not the kind you see in films, dusting a vase here or there. I was a behind-the-scenes housemaid at the palace, one of the invisible ones who makes the magic happen. My world was starch, beeswax, and the quiet hiss of the vacuum cleaner at 5 a.m. My stage was the back corridors, the service elevators, and the royal kitchens. I knew the temperature of the Prince of Wales's bath water and how the Queen liked her pillows arranged, but I never thought I'd be a witness to history. That changed on a Tuesday like any other, until the head housekeeper, Mrs. Patmore, a woman with a spine of steel and a stare that could curdle milk, found me polishing the banister on the grand staircase. "Vance," she whispered, her voice tight. "Hey, leave that. They need an extra pair of hands in the grand saloon. The investiture is this afternoon. Go, quickly, and keep your eyes down and your mouth shut." My heart hammered against my ribs. The investiture. The ceremony where the Prince of Wales would officially become the Prince of Wales. It was the biggest event of the decade. I scurried down the corridor, my sensible shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The grand saloon was a hive of organized chaos. Men in tailcoats and women in smart dresses moved with purpose, adjusting chairs, checking sound levels, and arranging flowers that cost more than I made in a year. I was given a cloth and told to stand by a side door, ready to wipe a smudge or straighten a fallen curtain tassel. My job was to be invisible, a piece of furniture, and that's what I became. I stood so still, so quiet, that I was sure the very air forgot I was there. Soon the room filled with dignitaries, archbishops, and peers in crimson robes. The air grew thick with the scent of expensive perfume and old wool. Then a new energy entered the room. The doors at the far end opened, and in walked the royal family. The Queen, small and radiant in a pastel blue suit, moved through the crowd with the practiced grace of a lifetime. Prince Philip was a step behind, ever the support. And then I saw him, Prince Charles. He looked nervous, his face pale beneath the carefully arranged television lights, and beside him, a small boy with his father's thoughtful eyes and his mother's shy smile, Prince William. He was only 8 or 9, dressed in a smart little suit and tie, looking overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the occasion. He held his father's hand for a moment before letting go, his young eyes wide as they scanned the glittering assembly. He was just a little boy, thrust into the middle of a centuries-old ritual. The ceremony began. It was a blur of solemn words, ancient prayers, and the glint of gold. I watched as the Queen placed a golden cape, the mantle, on her son's shoulders. Then came the coronet, a simple but heavy crown placed upon his head. Finally, the most intimate moment, the investiture. The Queen took a heavy gold ring from a velvet cushion. It was the sovereign's ring, a large, square emerald surrounded by diamonds, a symbol of the monarch's covenant with their people. She leaned forward to place it on Prince Charles's little finger, but the ring, ancient and stiff, wouldn't go on. I saw her push, a gentle but firm pressure, and I saw the slight wince on the prince's face as it finally slid over his knuckle. He was now, in every way, the Prince of Wales. After the ceremony, there was a reception. The tension dissolved into polite chatter and the clinking of glasses. I had been forgotten in my corner, my cloth now a damp, forgotten ball in my hand. I should have slipped away, but I was rooted to the spot, mesmerized. I watched the Prince of Wales, now adorned with the symbols of his new office, being congratulated by a seemingly endless line of people. He smiled, he nodded, he shook hands, but his eyes kept searching the room. Then, his face softened. He had found what he was looking for. He beckoned, a small, discreet gesture. From behind a forest of adults, little Prince William emerged. then navigating his way through the crowd with the earnest concentration of a child in a grown-up world. He reached his father's side, and the Prince of Wales, the most important man in the room after the Queen, immediately forgot everyone else. He bent down, bringing his face level with his son's. He didn't speak loudly, but in the momentary lull in the chatter around them, his voice carried. I couldn't help but hear. "Well, Willie," he said, his voice soft with a weariness that was only for his son. "What did you think of all that, then?" Little William, his hands clasped behind his back as he'd been taught, looked up at his father with those solemn eyes. "It was very long, Papa." A genuine smile, the first I'd seen all day, broke through the prince's formal mask. "It was, wasn't it? An awfully long time to stand still." William nodded, and his gaze dropping to his father's hand. He pointed at the heavy gold ring now firmly in place. "Does that mean you're a real prince now?" "I suppose it does," Charles said, his voice quiet. There was a pause. William's little brow furrowed. He looked at the ring, then at his father's face. "Does it hurt?" The question was so simple, so direct, so utterly human. It cut through all the pomp and circumstance. The prince seemed taken aback for a second. He glanced at the ring on his finger, then back at his son. He didn't give a politician's answer. He didn't give a prince's answer. He gave a father's answer. "A bit," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "It's quite tight, you see. It has to be. Otherwise it might fall off and get lost. And it's very, very old. Things that are very old and very important are sometimes a little uncomfortable." William considered this piece of wisdom. Then he reached out and gently touched his father's hand. "I hope your finger feels better soon, Papa." The prince's eyes glistened. He placed his other hand over his son's. "Thank you, Willie. That's very kind." He straightened up, and for a moment he was the Prince of Wales again. He gave William's shoulder a gentle pat, a silent signal that their private moment was over. William understood. He gave a little bow as he'd been taught, and melted back into the crowd, back to the care of his nanny. But I couldn't move. I stood there, my back pressed against the wall, my heart full to bursting. I had just witnessed a sacred moment. Not the sacredness of a royal investiture, but the sacredness of a father and son. I had seen the weight of a crown, not the one made of gold and velvet, but the invisible one of duty and expectation. And I had seen a little boy with a child's pure empathy try to lift it. His words truly shocked me. Not because they were profound, but because they were so ordinary, so full of love in a place where love seemed as foreign as a commoner in the grand saloon. Does it hurt? In all that glittering assembly, with all the congratulations and political maneuvering, only that little boy thought to ask if the symbol of power was causing his father pain. I finally managed to slip out of the room, my eyes stinging. In the cool quiet of the back corridor, I leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. The walls I had polished for years, the floors I had vacuumed, they weren't just a building anymore. Then they were the silent witnesses to a family's life, a family living under a microscope. Decades have passed since that day. I'm long retired now, living in a small cottage by the sea. I've seen Prince Charles become King Charles. I've watched Prince William grow into a man, a husband, a father, and the Prince of Wales himself. I see the photographs of him on official engagements, his face often wearing that same thoughtful, slightly weary expression his father had. And I see the photographs of his own children, especially Prince George. And every time I see a picture of the sovereign's ring, that heavy emerald and diamond band being passed down, I think of that moment. I think of a little boy in a too-big suit, his small hand touching his father's. I remember the question that no one else thought to ask. Does it hurt? It's a question for all of them, isn't it? For every person who wears a crown, whether of gold or of responsibility, does it hurt? The answer, I think, is always the same. A bit. It has to be, otherwise it might fall off. But the real magic, the real hope, is that there's someone there, someone who loves you, to reach out and ask. And that, to me, is more precious than any jewel in the crown. That is the true story I watched unfold.